Ah, chosen one, let's take a deep breath and truly look at the struggle that is currently dominating your life, the one that feels like a relentless weight, the one that breeds profound confusion, the one that makes you doubt the very core beliefs you held about your journey and your purpose. What if this apparent failure, this draining loss you are fighting so hard against, is not actually a sign of your defeat, but is, in fact, the precise location where a new kind of spiritual victory is being birthed? Imagine that the ground you believe is slipping away from beneath you is actually a sacred and necessary territory where your deepest self is being meticulously renovated, reformed, and strengthened for the path ahead. Look beneath the surface of the pain you are carrying, that inexplicable ache that seems to follow you, that unexpected silence from a trusted source, that crucial door that remains stubbornly shut despite your most fervent efforts and pushes. Stop for a moment and consider, what if these experiences weren't moments of failure at all? What if they were elements of a much grander, divinely engineered plan? What if this recent loss was never intended to be an ending, but rather a profoundly personal initiation? The truth is, those who are truly chosen rarely ascend to their destiny through unbroken sequences of easy triumphs. Instead, they rise through powerful breaks, through deep cracks, and often through total collapses. This is because only collapse has the power to reveal what was fundamentally false in your life. It is only through a deep spiritual and structural collapse that the things secretly holding you back are fully exposed. And critically, only collapse can carve open the path you were absolutely meant to walk. The path you couldn't see while you were still standing tall and confident in your old structure. You may genuinely feel that you are losing right now, yet a powerful, intuitive part of your spirit knows this isn't some arbitrary punishment. The process feels far too precise, too deeply intentional, and almost spiritually surgical in its execution. And that is exactly what you are experiencing. The battles that feel fundamentally unfair, brutally heavy, or even humiliating are not sent to destroy you in any way. Instead, these intense experiences are here to utterly transform you. They are here to meticulously peel away the layers of who you were that no longer align with your higher self. They are here to strip away the emotional and spiritual weights you didn't even realize you were carrying. Ultimately, they are here to forge the most resilient and capable version of you, the one who can actually walk into the destiny you have been relentlessly praying for. You are not currently being defeated. You are being reconstructed from the ground up. You are not being broken. You are being calibrated with a new spiritual precision. In the next few moments, we will explore why 5 very specific, core battles must be fully lost before a chosen soul can truly claim their ultimate spiritual victory. The reason for these necessary losses is clear. Without them, the magnitude of the break, through that awaits you, would likely crush you under its weight instead of crowning you with glory. Stay with me, chosen one. Do not allow a single thing to distract you right now. What you are about to receive will finally connect all the disjointed dots of everything you have intensely lived through, making it all make profound sense. Before we dive into the first battle, please take a second to tap like to seal this powerful message into your spirit. Subscribe if you feel this unmistakable calling fully awakening deep inside your soul, and quietly comment 99 because in the spiritual realm, 99 symbolizes the very moment just before completion, the critical instant right before every element finally aligns. Your journey toward alignment begins now. The first battle, losing the illusion of control, chosen one. There is a distinct, unavoidable phase in your journey where you will find your hands slipping from every single thing you tried so desperately to hold together. You will feel pieces of your life shifting without your express permission. Long-term plans will begin rearranging themselves on their own. Timelines you counted on will suddenly collapse in ways you never remotely anticipated. Your immediate, primal instinct is to fall into a panic, because you were taught by the world that maintaining control equates to safety, and losing control signifies immediate danger. But you must understand that in the spiritual arena, the exact opposite is the ultimate truth. The moment your mortal grip finally fails is the very instant that God's sovereign hand becomes absolutely undeniable in your life. The moment your carefully constructed personal structure collapses is the moment His perfect alignment truly begins to take root. You have been tirelessly attempting to micromanage every detail, every outcome, and every potential possibility, as if your destiny depended entirely on your ability to keep everything in its perfectly intended place. But hear this: chosen souls are not elevated by a false sense of stability. They are elevated through surrender, and genuine surrender only becomes possible when control is definitively taken off the table as an option. Think deeply about this. Why would the divine allow such sudden and confusing chaos to enter your life? Why do those doors that once seemed absolutely certain suddenly slam shut with finality? Why do timelines that were meticulously planned suddenly crumble, even when you were meticulously following all the rules? What if the chaos you are experiencing isn't an attack from a dark source, but rather a profound transfer of authority? What if the intense shift you're navigating is God gently pulling you out of the driver's seat, because where He is taking you, you were never meant to navigate by your own limited strength or alone? You may call this current state disorder. Heaven calls it repositioning. You might categorize this waiting period as a debilitating delay. Heaven sees it as a deep, necessary rooting. You may define your current situation as a total collapse. Heaven declares it is a thorough clearance. Sometimes, cherished things fall apart precisely because they were subtly blocking the very path you desperately needed to find. Sometimes vital relationships must end because their presence was suffocating the powerful, emergent version of you that God is tirelessly attempting to bring forth. Sometimes promising opportunities vanish because they simply weren't large enough to contain the vast calling that has been placed upon your life. This current chaos is not random or arbitrary. It is incredibly targeted. It is the divine, undeniable handshake between the person you were yesterday and the glorious, capable person you are in the process of becoming today. But here is the profound paradox that only the chosen can truly grasp. The exact moment your life stops making linear sense is the moment your deepest purpose begins to make undeniable spiritual progress. The intense confusion you feel is not a sign of abandonment or neglect. It is the clearest sign of repositioning. The painful delay is never a denial of your worth. It is a powerful redirection with specific, divine purpose woven into every single second of the wait. And those moments when you feel the most lost are actually the moments when the hand of God has stepped in the strongest way possible. Let me ask you this question: what if the very path you are currently terrified to walk is, in truth, the only path that is perfectly aligned with your imminent breakthrough? What if the act of losing control is the ultimate doorway to the profound alignment you've been praying for, yet simultaneously doing everything to avoid? What if God is intentionally interrupting your own finite plans because those plans were far too small to contain the magnificent magnitude of what He fully intends to build through your life? Feel this powerful truth resonate within your soul. The chosen do not rise to their station through the grip of human control. They rise through total, comprehensive alignment. And alignment fundamentally demands trust. This trust is not placed in what you can physically control, but precisely in what you absolutely cannot. Therefore, when your entire life structure begins shifting rapidly without your consent or approval, do not reflexively fight it. Instead, lean in and look closer, because if you truly pay attention beneath the surface, you will notice something deeply strange and wonderful is happening. You will see a pattern, a profound precision, a timing that feels almost too perfectly intentional to be mere coincidence. That, my friend, is the undeniable fingerprint of destiny taking decisive control. And here is the element that should keep you completely locked in for the revelations that follow. If losing control represents the absolute first step, then the next battle will forcefully reveal why God needed to break your grip completely before He could show you the magnificent, world-changing thing He is truly building with you. Continue with me, because the next revelation will feel even heavier and more critical. The second battle, fracturing your circle, chosen one, there is a relentless and silent battle that you never saw coming. It's a battle that doesn't break your physical bones, but devastatingly fractures your entire circle of support. It arrives quietly, like an insidious shadow that slips in between you and the very people you were absolutely certain would walk with you until the very end. Your key relationships slowly begin to shift. Conversations that were once effortless grow conspicuously colder. Someone who once understood every secret corner of your soul suddenly feels like an undeniable stranger. A friend who once loudly celebrated your smallest victories now watches your ascent with a strange, heavy silence. A family member who passionately claimed to love you now mysteriously stops showing up when you need them most. And you are left sitting in the quiet aftermath, endlessly wondering, what catastrophic thing did I do wrong? Why is everyone I care about pulling away at the exact time I need them for support? Why does it feel like I'm being completely abandoned by the very people I trusted most in the world? But here is the painful, yet ultimately divine truth you must face. You were not being abandoned in the traditional sense. You were being profoundly shielded. You didn't tragically lose them. God strategically removed them because your elevated purpose demanded a certain separation long before your heart was emotionally ready to accept the necessity of it. Some people, for the sake of your future, were simply never meant to be witnesses to the next sacred chapter of your destiny because their very presence would subtly contaminate it. Their lingering influence would fatally slow your progress. Their underlying energy would inevitably distort the calling. Their motives, God saw, were simply not as pure as their spoken words. And God saw the hidden truth that you, in your kindness, could not. Think deeply. Why did their unwavering loyalty seem to expire at the precise moment your sacred calling began to deeply intensify? Why did their purported support mysteriously disappear right when your spirit started to powerfully rise? Why did their true, unvarnished colors reveal themselves the instant your anointing became far too potent for them to ignore? That was never an accident or coincidence. That was a clear, unmissable spiritual exposure. They strategically walked away because staying would have inevitably sabotaged and harmed you. Their sudden exit, it was, in essence, their final confession. Their protracted silence was their unexpected testimony. Their distance became their ultimate revelation. And just because you couldn't overhear their private conversations doesn't mean that heaven was deaf to them. They believed their petty actions were completely hidden from view. But you must remember that absolutely nothing is hidden from the one who vigilantly protects his chosen ones. Some of the people in your circle were merely using your profound kindness as a thin mask for their deep-seated envy. Some were putting on a masterful pretense of loving you while secretly hoping, deep down, that you would ultimately fail. Some strategically stayed close only to monitor your significant growth, not to authentically support it. And others simply could not handle the sheer luminous weight of the calling that had been placed squarely on your life. So, in His infinite wisdom, God made absolutely sure they would not stay in your orbit long enough to lethally interfere with your mission. You have not tragically lost anything important. You were profoundly rescued because your purpose is far too sacred and valuable to be continuously surrounded by the wrong types of hearts. Your destiny is too rare and precious to be shared with those who carry cheap, diluted intentions. Your spirit is far too valuable to be drained by individuals who only ever took, but never sincerely poured back into your well. Let me ask you another critical question. When that person finally walked away, did your spirit truly break and shatter, or did something deep inside you finally begin to quietly breathe again? When they decisively left your life, did the atmosphere immediately surrounding you become darker and heavier? Or did it actually become much quieter, lighter, and astonishingly clearer? What if the intense absence you feared so much was actually the vital space that God specifically needed to construct something far greater and more fulfilling? What if the brief pain their departure caused was the ultimate, final sign that they were never intended to be part of your promised future to begin with? Look at your life with rigorous clarity. Who strategically left the moment you began your becoming? Who abruptly disconnected when your light began to powerfully grow stronger? Who faded into the background when your soul started its deep awakening? Their disappearance was timed with absolute precision because their presence was fundamentally incompatible with your imminent elevation. And now comes the major twist, the deeper, shocking revelation that most people never fully grasp. The people who quietly walked away were merely the easy removals. But what comes next is even more startling because the third battle is not about the individuals who left. It's about what God is actively preparing to replace them with in your life. Trust me completely that coming revelation will change every one of your core assumptions. The third battle, the discomfort of the unfamiliar chosen one. There is a pivotal moment in every divine journey when the rhythm of life suddenly stops feeling familiar and predictable. The ingrained routines that once provided a feeling of safety abruptly stop working for you. The places that used to comfort and recharge you no longer fit the spiritual dimensions of your emerging self. The key people you relied on simply cannot carry you in the same way they once did. The opportunities you believed were stable and guaranteed begin to severely tremble. And you find yourself asking, often in a frustrated whisper, why is everything shifting all at once? Why does every comfort feel like it's being systematically pulled right out from under me? Why does the very ground I trusted suddenly feel so profoundly unstable? It's happening because comfort is the sworn enemy of elevation. And those who are chosen are never, ever allowed to remain in a spiritual space where their spirit ceases to vigorously grow. You were fundamentally not designed for stillness or stagnation. You were designed for constant, radical expansion. But you must know that expansion always hurts significantly before it begins to heal. It stretches you painfully before it eventually strengthens you. It disrupts your entire world before it delivers its blessing. When God intends to awaken the sleeping giant within you, He must forcefully shake the rigid structures that have kept you tame and manageable. Comfort subtly dulls the edge of your discernment. Discomfort, on the other hand, sharpens it into a powerful sword. Comfort keeps your life predictable and small. Discomfort makes you unexpectedly and fiercely powerful. Comfort ensures you stay small and hidden. Discomfort actively forces your spirit to rise in magnificent ways that your former self would have never even dared to allow. Think about this reality. If every element in your life remained perpetually soft, stable, and conveniently comfortable, would you ever truly discover the immense strength you actually carry deep within? Would you ever truly learn what your core faith sounds like when stripped of the loud noise of certainty? Would you ever take the necessary, terrifying step into the promise that is actively waiting for you far beyond the known borders of what feels deeply familiar? Every chosen soul eventually reaches a specific point where God systematically disrupts their comfort, not to exact punishment, but to forcefully activate them into their power. Suddenly, doors close that you never, ever expected to shut. Money tightens dramatically in ways that force you to think with entirely new resourcefulness. Paths that were once wide open suddenly lock down entirely. Routines that once brought you peace now only breed a deep, spiritual restlessness. This is not some form of spiritual sabotage. It is the most rigorous, high-level spiritual training. You are being meticulously refined, not carelessly restricted. You are being dramatically stretched, not suffocated into non-existence. You are being masterfully rebuilt, not ruined beyond repair. The process of losing your comfort is never the collapse of your entire life. It is the urgent birth of your spiritual muscle. It is the part of you that instinctively rises when everything else around you falls. It is the part of you that learns precisely how to walk when nothing in your circumstances makes logical sense. It is the part of you that prays not from a place of mere routine, but from a wellspring of raw, unadulterated power. It is the part of you that begins to clearly sense things before they actually happen. It is the version of you that can no longer be truly shaken by external storms because you have already courageously survived the hurricane that raged within. Let me ask you one last question on this point. What if that deep discomfort you're feeling right now isn't a sign that you are failing spectacularly, but the clearest indicator that something incredibly great is waking up inside your soul? What if the severe pressure you are experiencing is actually the telltale sign of a colossal break, through actively forming in the unseen spiritual realm? What if the closing of certain well-worn paths is the divine hand powerfully redirecting you to the magnificent, destined ones you were always intended to walk? What if this intense spiritual stretching is not God strategically taking something from you, but God powerfully unlocking the limitless potential that was already within you? Feel the powerful shift actively happening in your spirit this very second. You are not breaking apart. You are powerfully emerging. You are not being deliberately weakened. You are being spiritually weaponized. You are not being pushed down into the dirt. You are being forcefully pushed forward into your future. And here is the hidden core truth. When a chosen one loses their comfort, they simultaneously gain an unparalleled clarity. And clarity, above all else, is the absolute foundation of your calling. The fourth battle, the collapse of your own plans, chosen one. This particular battle is the one that profoundly shakes even the strongest and most resilient spirits. It is the devastating moment when your personal plans, the ones you painstakingly built, fervently prayed over, vigilantly protected, and deeply believed in, begin to fall apart, one agonizing piece at a time. You stand there watching doors you were absolutely certain would open suddenly slam shut without any explanation. Timelines you deeply trusted unravel completely right in front of your eyes. Opportunities you thought were securely guaranteed dissolve into thin air, as if they were never even real in the first place. And you are left standing, wondering in anguish, why is everything collapsing at the exact moment I thought I was finally making tangible progress? Why does every single path I meticulously mapped out suddenly feel blocked and impassable? Why does the future I planned so carefully feel like it just slipped completely through my desperate fingers? This is the intense, unavoidable frustration that every single chosen one must face. The pain of watching your own blueprint burn fiercely while having no immediate idea whatsoever what magnificent new structure God is busy building behind the obscuring smoke. But here is the critical twist you must internalize. What you dramatically call a total collapse, heaven calls a profound correction. What you label a failure, heaven views as a strategic filtering. What you mourn as lost time, heaven recognizes as a necessary strategic delay. Your personal plan did not fall apart because you were inherently wrong or unworthy. It fell apart precisely because it was far too small, too safe, too easily predictable, and far too fundamentally human for your divine destiny. And your destiny, my friend, is anything but human in its scope. Allow this powerful truth to anchor itself deep within your spirit. A chosen one's personal plan must utterly collapse before God's monumental design can finally rise and take its place. Because if your original plan had somehow stayed perfectly intact, you would have almost certainly settled for what you merely wanted, instead of boldly stepping into the magnificence of what you were definitively meant for. You may have been completely convinced that your personal plan was crystal clear, but God saw the subtle, hidden traps you couldn't perceive. You didn't notice the key people you trusted, who would have inevitably betrayed you at the worst time. You couldn't discern the opportunities that looked perfectly golden, but were, in truth, spiritually toxic. You set a timeline that would have placed you in the entirely wrong location at the worst possible moment. You did not, in fact, lose your plan. You were miraculously spared by grace from a plan that would have severely limited you. Think back deeply. How many times did something devastating not work out, only for you to look back months or even years later and realize with absolute certainty, if that had actually happened, it would have destroyed me completely. How many times did a powerfully closed door end up being the greatest, most profound protection of your entire life? How many times did losing a clear path eventually lead you to a far better one you didn't even know existed? You are not being punished or scorned. You are being meticulously redirected with surgical precision. And here is the raw truth that will sting before it brings profound spiritual healing. You absolutely cannot hold onto your own map and simultaneously follow God's direction. One must ultimately be discarded. It's either your deep, seated need for control or God's powerful need to guide you. It's either your flawed, human timeline or His perfect, sovereign timing. It's either your limited version of the future or the boundless, magnificent destiny He is actively trying to give you. The one that violently exceeds every single expectation you have ever timidly held for yourself. So do not run frantically from the collapse. Do not fight the finality of the closing doors. Do not desperately cling to the timeline that utterly refuses to obey your mortal logic. Look at the pattern emerging. Look at the perfect timing of events. Look at how every single thing that fell apart shared one common, essential trait. It was fundamentally unaligned with your anointing. What mysteriously disappeared was never meant to stay by your side. What failed spectacularly was never an integral part of your true purpose. What slipped away into the shadows was never truly strong enough to carry the immense weight of the warrior you are rapidly becoming. Losing your personal plan is not losing your future success. It is losing the limited, restrictive version of your future that would have inevitably sabotaged your ultimate calling. And here is where the anticipation must rise dramatically. Because if God is systematically removing your plan, it is only because His plan is already decisively on its way to you. His plan doesn't seek to break your spirit, it actively seeks to build you up. His plan doesn't limit your potential, it dramatically launches you into the stratosphere. His plan doesn't shrink your world, it expands it in ways your finite mind could never have possibly predicted. You are now about to finally see why everything didn't work out as you wished. You are about to deeply understand why every door needed to close with such force. You are about to realize that the painful delay was never a punishment or an oversight. It was the crucial setup for something absolutely far greater than you could comprehend. But before you can fully receive that crowning revelation, you must face the final, most defining battle of all. The one that doesn't just change your external path, but fundamentally changes you. And that sacred transformation is coming next. Prepare yourself, chosen one. The deepest, most necessary shift is about to majestically unfold. The fifth battle, the death of the old self-chosen one, this final, most personal battle is the one that absolutely no one prepares you for. It is the one that doesn't just take something from you. It demands the total and complete removal of something deep out of you. It necessitates a version of surrender that goes far beyond letting go of specific people, treasured plans, or temporary comfort. This battle demands the ultimate, final release, the necessary death of the specific person you used to be. And nothing, absolutely nothing in this journey cuts more profoundly than that. This is because your old self feels deeply familiar, safely predictable, and comfortable. Even if that version was inherently limiting you, even if it was silently suffocating your spirit, even if it was built entirely upon old wounds you never fully healed, it was, at the end of the day, still yours. But the extraordinary calling on your life is far too great, too potent, to be successfully carried by an outdated, restrictive identity. A chosen soul simply cannot rise to their high destiny while relentlessly dragging the immense, spiritual weight of who they were before their awakening began. So, life must begin to systematically peel you, strip you, and profoundly expose you, not to intentionally humiliate you, but to set your inner self completely free. This dismantling starts subtly. Old habits that once provided a fleeting comfort suddenly feel hollow and meaningless. Old, paralyzing fears that once controlled your every move begin to rapidly lose their powerful grip. Old environments that once felt like a loving home now start feeling spiritually too small, almost stiflingly claustrophobic. You try desperately to step back into the comforting shoes of who you were, but something new and powerful inside you flatly refuses to shrink again. You attempt to think in the limited, familiar way you used to, but your newly awakened mind now vehemently rejects those old, toxic patterns like a healthy body rejecting a poison. You try to ignore the growing volume of your intuition, but it just keeps getting louder, clearer, and incomparably sharper. You must recognize that this inner turmoil is not confusion or chaos. It is evolution. This profound spiritual shift is not a loss of self. It is a decisive extraction. You are actively shedding an old skin, an outdated layer that simply does not possess the capacity to follow you into the boundless future God is actively building. Let this powerful, clarifying image deeply enter your spirit. A serpent cannot choose the path of growth without courageously abandoning the skin it has completely outgrown. Attempting to stay inside that constrictive old layer would be fatal. Breaking free of it may look incredibly painful from the outside, but remaining trapped inside is a spiritual death sentence. And the same absolute truth holds for you, chosen one. Your old self was not inherently evil or wrong. It was simply too small for the magnitude of your purpose, too wounded to competently carry your great assignment, too limited in its thinking to walk with the power of your anointing, and too profoundly afraid to stand in the magnificent magnitude of who you are rapidly becoming. And so, God begins the sacred and necessary dismantling. He meticulously removes the false identities you reluctantly inherited from past pain. He systematically dismantles the emotional masks you skillfully wore just to survive those seasons of darkness. He decisively cuts ties with the coping behaviors you used to hide, the repetitive patterns you used to disguise yourself, and the debilitating fears you used to instinctively obey. Piece by piece, layer by layer, He carefully separates you from everything that once defined your limited self. This process often feels precisely like dying because, in a profound spiritual sense, it is a kind of death. But listen closely, chosen one. What dies is only the version of you that absolutely cannot access the full breadth of your destiny. What powerfully rises in its place is the magnificent warrior God always intended you to be. Feel the immense weight of that truth, and simultaneously feel the breathtaking liberation that comes with it. Because once this ultimate transformation truly begins, there is simply no going back to the old ways. You can never return to small, restrictive thinking once your mind has powerfully tasted the sweetness of spiritual expansion. You can never revert to toxic, cyclical cycles once your spirit has learned the clear light of true discernment. You can never successfully shrink yourself down to fit back into rooms where God has already decisively removed your presence. You can't successfully pretend to be the person you were when heaven is actively calling forth the profound, majestic person you are meant to be. Here is the one thing most people never fully grasp. The process of losing your old self is not a punishment or a setback. It is the ultimate promotion. It is the essential spiritual rebirth that forever separates the merely called from the truly chosen. It is the undeniable moment where your destiny becomes absolutely certain and non-negotiable. It is the moment when your identity stops being something you merely inherited and instead becomes a sacred creation that God Himself meticulously shaped. And you can undeniably feel it actively happening within you right now, can't you? A profound pull, a powerful shift, a growing pressure deep within your spirit that definitively declares you cannot stay the same. That inner friction is not a sign of discomfort or struggle. That is resurrection. That deep internal tremor is not a sign of fear. That is the raw power of emergence. That sensation is not a final loss. That is the stunning unveiling of the magnificent version of you that was patiently buried beneath years of mere survival. And here is the most powerful, concluding part of this revelation. If God is now definitively asking you to fully release this old version of yourself, it is only because the next version, the ultimate version, the one patiently waiting on the other side of this spiritual shedding, is the one that will finally, powerfully step into the destined calling you have. Keenly, sensed your entire life. And now everything you have deeply lived through, everything you have painfully lost, and everything you have courageously survived has been actively leading you to one final, unifying revelation, one ultimate truth, one final shift that will make the entire, arduous journey finally make complete and perfect sense. Stay absolutely with me, because this powerful conclusion will weave everything together in a way your deepest spirit has been desperately waiting to hear. Final revelation, my loss was my lifting, chosen one. Everything we have discussed until this very moment has been tirelessly building toward this climax, this ultimate awakening, this exact second where your spirit finally grasps the profound truth that your rational mind simply could not articulate. None of your struggles were ever random chance. None of your losses were ever pointless tragedies. None of your collapses were ever mere coincidences. Every single shift, every shed tear, every painful ending, every intense disruption, it was all an intrinsic part of a divine strategy crafted with such perfect precision that only heaven could have written the script. You sincerely believed life was stripping you bare, but in reality, you were being meticulously sculpted. You thought you were being abandoned by all you held dear, but you were actually being definitively set apart. You feared you were being broken beyond repair, but you were actually being rebuilt into a glorious version of yourself, now powerfully capable of carrying a destiny far, far greater than anything your imagination could conjure. Hear this with every fiber of your soul, you did not lose. You were intentionally positioned, spiritually strengthened, and perfectly aligned. Everything that fell away from you was creating crucial, much-needed space. Everything that ended was permanently removing debilitating weight. Everything that truly hurt was carving you into a vessel that could finally step into your calling without the slightest hesitation, without the paralysis of fear, and without the heavy, restricting chains of who you used to be. Your series of losses were not signs of inherent weakness or unworthiness. They were the undeniable signs of selection. They were the indelible marks of someone truly chosen for a path that very few human beings are spiritually strong enough to walk. They were the tangible proof that heaven was deeply investing in you, patiently preparing you, and fiercely refining you for the ultimate task. And now here comes the turning point, the powerful revelation your spirit has been patiently waiting for. Your losses were your most potent training. Every single defeat taught you unwavering discernment. Every painful separation protected your sacred purpose. Every moment of discomfort forcefully activated your dormant strength. Every collapsed plan perfectly redirected your true destiny. And every flawed version of yourself that died made the necessary room for the magnificent warrior now powerfully rising inside your spirit. What you mistakenly thought was utterly breaking you was, in fact, actively building your deepest spiritual authority. What you feared was the absolute end was merely the sacred birthplace of your stunning elevation. What you mistakenly believed was arbitrary punishment was, in truth, meticulous preparation for a break, through so seismic and powerful that it absolutely required a purified and empty vessel to hold its immense energy. Chosen one, your breakdown was never a curse. It was the essential, unavoidable doorway to your breakthrough, and you are standing decisively at the sacred threshold of that breakthrough right now. Let this profound truth anchor itself deep within your very bones. You are not behind schedule. You are not eternally lost. You are not defeated in any way. You are powerfully emerging. You are definitively stepping into alignment. You are now walking into the chapter of your life that required everything you have intensely endured. And now, to fully seal this triumphant moment, to boldly declare this massive shift over your own entire life, speak it into the comments section like a spiritual, unshakable decree. Declare, my loss was my lifting. Say it out loud because it is the fundamental truth. Say it because it is deeply prophetic. Say it because the spiritual realm responds instantly when a chosen one unequivocally declares their inevitable rise. And now receive these final potent words like a consuming fire. Your loss profoundly awakened your destiny. Your loss decisively broke your restricting chains. Your loss triumphantly opened your path. And now you rise,